Hello, and welcome to Mindset Matters, the show where leadership gets personal. We dive deep into the real stories, lived experiences, and powerful lessons that shape leaders from the inside out. Whether you're leading a team, a classroom, a business, or just trying to lead yourself well, this podcast is for you. And my name is Alex Linares, and I will be your host for today. And I've entitled this episode Lessons in Empathy Becoming a Teacher. I have really enjoyed the opportunity to work alongside Dr. Evans and Mr. T. McBride for the past few months in creating this podcast, Mindset Matters. I've done a bit more of the technical work of editing audio and creating thumbnails and things like that and posting to YouTube. And I've just been really inspired by the things that I have heard from both of them. And I wanted to share today on how empathy played such a big part of my recovery from a trauma that I experienced as a young boy. As I'm recording this, it is June 17th, so I'm an educator myself, and I'm thinking of my fellow educators, how they are either wrapping up the school year, maybe another week or so, or maybe they've been out for 2 or 3 weeks. But it gets to a point where the summer is here. You may have some experiences with family and friends, could be vacation or such. But at some point, you may have to come back to your why. Why are you going to go back in August and September and start this all over again? Why do you want to teach? Why do you want to continue doing this path of education? And it's something that I've always gone back to, is understanding my why. And for myself, the why comes down to empathy from just a handful of teachers that helped me to get through my middle school and high school experience, because I experienced a trauma. And just to start my story and give you the context of my childhood, I am going to be explaining a time when I was 11 years old. I was living in Staten Island, New York, and I was in sixth grade. My parents were separated at the time. I was living with my father. He was working really hard. He was a detective in New York City, an extremely stressful job, I could imagine. But I loved my childhood. I just really enjoyed the fact that I lived across the street from a park, and I had tons of friends that we can hang out every single day, just go across the street to the park and enjoy our time together. And again, I just really loved my childhood. Trauma just happens so quick in life. And I think for anyone listening, if you have experienced a trauma yourself, you know it's almost like the snap of fingers where life just changes so quick. And I remember on this particular day, it was May 22nd of 1995. I had a class trip where we were heading over to New Jersey to do this kind of space experience. I think it was called the Challenger experience out in Paramus, New Jersey. I remember that morning missing the bus to school, and my father dropped me off, and he said to me, I love you. And he said, I love you, and I'll see you later. Head into school, make my way to the trip, have an amazing time. Really beautiful day, beautiful weather, lots of fun. And I remember taking the bus home that day and walking into my apartment building, opening the door to my house, where I found some family members who had such a concerned look on their face. And I'll never forget that look. And I asked them what was wrong, and they said to me at that time, my father did not make it into work that day, and he had been missing for hours. I did not really understand what that meant. I was panicking myself, and at the time I would communicate with my father through his pager. I would beep him, send the phone number, and he would usually call me back in a specific amount of time. But I remember kind of frantically beeping him nonstop, probably for a few hours. It took some time, but the next day I did find out that my father did pass away. That morning, he had taken his own life. He had parked down by by the river in his car and using his police weapon there, his handgun, he took his own life there. And I did not really get the details of how he passed away until some time later. I was 11 years old, so I just knew once they said that he was gone, I was completely devastated, and my life completely changed. As I mentioned before, was really enjoying just being a kid, doing kid things and playing video games, going to the park, riding bike, playing with my friends. Life changed really quick. And next, I remember going to school probably about a week later after the funeral and such. And one of the things that I noticed was the response from fellow students, first of all. A lot of them just giving their condolences. Many students who I did not interact with, I didn't know, just saying how sorry they were for me. And I'm not sure how all the details got out, but they did get out on how and what happened to him. I thought it may have been in the news. But I just remember that really helped me out a lot, just how empathetic my fellow students were. And then as I made my way into class, I really could care less about school at that moment. The details of things in science and math class did not matter to me. But I do remember teachers who were very hard on me throughout the school year, teachers whom maybe I was probably disrespectful to at times. They had so much empathy for me, and that really stood out to me. They were very gracious on the amount of work that they were giving to me. The workload I was able to handle it just kind of given the circumstances, and they just constantly would talk to me. And that stood out to me because they did not really have to do that. I think sometimes when you're around people who are experiencing trauma, we don't always know how to react, especially in education. There's just so many students, and you may not even know exactly what is going on, but I really appreciated that, and it stood out to me so much. I had to spend about another 2 months in school before the end of the school year, and it went well. It went well enough. I can't say that I remember every single thing from the lesson plans and the tests and such. I was able to pass enough. But it was just a very difficult time that was made easier by their empathy. And that was 6th grade. And after that experience, I did have to move out of state to New Jersey with my mother and at the time her boyfriend, who had become my stepfather. And I just remember it meant new state, new school, new friends, new house, new room, pretty much everything new. And that was very scary. I don't know if I transitioned well in this experience being 11 years old. I definitely put walls up for people who were trying to help me, but I'm very grateful to God for my family who helped me through this time and was very patient with me. But times were tough, and as I got older, 7th grade went by, barely passed. 8th grade went by, did a little bit better, but then I get to high school, and the high school experience was a wonderful experience for me. But I remember being a freshman and being in a English class, and I was extremely quiet. I would not raise my hand. I would barely pass, maybe with a C plus or C minus. That would be my range of high and low. But I really made it a point to kind of just hide out in a class and just maybe make sure that I was not seen. And I tried to work really hard at that. And in this one particular class, I remember the teacher trying to break down the walls with me, talking to me after class and such. And I really appreciated his effort, but it just wasn't there for me yet. It took some time, but he eventually reached out to the school counselor. The school counselor then worked with my mother to talk about the experiences that I went through. And it was his empathy that really helped to break down the walls of my experience in high school. He worked with me. He didn't give up on me. He actually helped me to become a part of chess club. It was great to do that experience. I enjoyed playing chess, and he was the person in charge of chess club. So seeing the effort that a teacher was putting in to not just say that this student is an introvert, but to dig deep to understand why, really stood out to me. Now, the definition of empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And he did this. He spent time with me to check in with me, asked me about how I was doing in other classes. And I believe he even checked in with my other teachers to kind of just update them on what was going on in my life. And I really, really appreciated that. So I'm here today as an educator. This experience, this trauma that I went through was just a little over 30 years ago. And it impacted me so greatly. And for anyone here, if you are a leader, it is just so important to have empathy as part of your routine. I hope that in your classroom, in your business, whatever the setting is, that the empathy is there to begin with, that it doesn't take some sort of a trauma to all of a sudden go ahead and be empathetic. Now, the experiences that I had with these wonderful teachers who had empathy, they were planting seeds into my life. I don't want to just say that everything moving forward was easy and I was the perfect student. I would still struggle with some things. Dealing with the trauma had its ups and downs. There were days that were great, and then there were days that I was really low, and that would take some more time to work through. But this impacted me so much that as I got older and I went to college, I didn't know exactly at the time what I wanted to do, so I just kind of went towards computer science because it was something that I had an interest in. It was something that I did as a hobby, working on computers and games and such. But after I graduated, I remember talking with my professor as we were getting ready to get our diplomas. He mentioned, or he was talking with me about what comes next for me and what are the jobs, what am I looking to do. And I remember talking with him, and he mentioned that if you ever want to get into teaching, all you have to do is take this particular exam, and then since you have a bachelor's degree, you can go into teaching. And I remember thinking about that for a little bit, go into teaching, and that seemed radical to me, because while I was greatly impacted by these teachers, I just didn't know if I would have the ability to lead a classroom. What would I teach? How would I teach? I really did not know anything about teaching. So even after that experience, I did go ahead and take the test. I passed, and I was kind of licensed or had the ability to go teach in a school. And I was unable to find any kind of teaching jobs at the time, at least in the state, but I was able to land a job with a after-school science enrichment company. And this actually gave me the opportunity to get into classrooms. It gave me an opportunity to learn how I teach, to work on classroom management, to work on so many things. And I'm grateful for that opportunity, and I'm grateful for opportunities also in church to lead youth group and things like that. They're just leadership opportunities and teaching opportunities as well. But a few years later, I get my first opportunity to teach a kindergarten class, and I was just so excited. And I just remember preparing for the class. Of course, you have your lesson plans and you're going through things about helping these students to learn how to read, but then it comes down to, like, how do I deliver this curriculum, this content? And I remember thinking of my story and just starting with empathy and saying, this is such a great experience, and I want to make sure that I take what I learned as a student and I apply this now to my opportunities as a teacher. So kindergarten was a great experience, and you just do your best to work with these students, see where they're at, but then also challenge them to work on certain skills. And it's not always about academics. It's about character. It's about morals and such. And from that opportunity, I made my way down to Florida, and that's where I was able to get introduced to Dr. Evans, and where he led me for, I think it was about 6 years or so. So as I had this great opportunity in working in the school with Dr. Evans, this was middle school at the time, and I remember working really hard in my classroom to make sure that I would never send any students who would misbehave out of the classroom or to the dean of students. I really, really wanted to make sure that if there were any issues going on, that first of all, my classroom management was up to par. And if a student was going through something, I really wanted to make sure to take them aside, maybe at the doorway or right outside the classroom for a minute or so and just check in with them, see what was going on. But I remember this one time with a student, I really did not bring empathy into the classroom that day, and he was being very difficult. He was challenging me in front of the classroom, which you never really love as a teacher. Gave him his warnings, tried to redirect him, and it just got to a point where I said, wow, this is it. This has got to be the first student that I really need to throw out of class. And I remember at that point telling him that he had to go. There was too much of a disruption, and I just felt horrible. I felt like a failure. He did go out of the classroom. It wasn't anything where he got in trouble, but I did need him to kind of take a breather, go to a different room. And the next day, I took him aside and I really tried to, first I apologized to him. I said, I'm sorry that it came down to that. But I then remembered just things that I went through as a student, and I just tried to talk with him. I felt like we had a good rapport. We had a good relationship where I could ask him things and he would tell me. But of course, in that moment, we just both were not in a great place. And he did share with me some of the difficulties that he was going through at home, and how even as a 7th grade student, he had great responsibilities and almost was the father of his home at that age and helping his mom. He was the only male in his household, and he had younger siblings that he had to take care of, and he had been going through a lot and helping, and his mother was working a lot. And I just remember feeling horrible. I had waited, unfortunately, until the next day to really address that issue, and I really appreciated it that he did accept my apology, and we had an opportunity to talk about it. But if I would have been able to just recall that day, if I had empathy, I really just feel like we could have had a better experience. I could have had more patience, but unfortunately I just didn't have it that day. And I think for all educators, even leaders, if you're leading a team of people and they're going through things, they may not, of course, always communicate what is going on. And that's where it is for leaders to understand why. Why is your team not meeting its potential? What is going on? What are the deeper roots of things? Are you just going to accept that people are just introverts and not really figure out what's going on? How are you going to lead this team well? And for me, that was the last time that I had thrown a student out of the class. Just kind of really reminded myself to be more empathetic, and had a great relationship with that student. And I also went back into the class the next day and talked to the class about that experience as well, and just trying to lead them well. But just to wrap this up, thank you so much for listening. I really hope that for educators, as you get to the summertime, you are working hard to get recharged, to just remember your why. It's so important. I think we all need it. We all need to remember and recall. And for those of us who have had experiences that are just awesome in the classroom or with the team, you came up with some great idea or you led well, that is amazing as well to remember. But then sometimes we do have to pull out those opportunities that we did not do so great at. Maybe we just lacked a specific quality that day, and hopefully we can remember that and be better the next time. Thank you so much for listening again. I am going to speak a bit more in my next episode about the trauma that I experienced with my father. It is full of more details and things that I want to share, and definitely be a bit longer. But thank you again.